Welcome to the Module 11 feedback loop. First 2 points today on capital budgeting are to clarify some terminology and concepts, really important that we use the right terms, and to close 2 reminders from observations in this week's seminars. In Monday's class, the first 2 knowledge check questions asked you to identify some important case facts, and on balance, the answers to the knowledge check questions were well done. Wanted to point out that in both questions, we asked you to look for cash flows, so upfront cash outflows and recurring cash flows. And that's a really important distinction. When we calculate net present value, we perform discounted cash flow analysis. I usually suggest to students equate NPV with DCF, and remember the CF stands for cash flows. So when you look at the sample quant in the solution that is posted, when we get down to the very bottom, we have a row that talks about net cash flows, the upfront cash flows of $640,000, and then the net cash flows in each of the 5 future years. That's what we're discounting. We're not discounting net income. That is a different concept. The third knowledge check question we asked you dealt with the discount rate that you would use when you were discounting those cash flows. Most of you identified that we're suggesting, at least in second year, you use the weighted average cost of capital to discount cash flows for a capital budgeting project. And again, most of you got that correct. And probably were able to use that WACC out of the case to calculate the present value factors that you see on the slide, which again are pulled from the sample quant, to get to the present value of each of those annual cash flows. When we calculate net present value, we're basically summing up the present value of those cash flows for the 5 years and time 0 to get the $51,000 or $52,000 net present value. Now, what does that tell us? If net present value is greater than 0, then the project over the 5 years delivers a return that is greater than the weighted average cost of capital. And that's a good thing, because ultimately that should lead to future profitability. But please again be careful using terminology. Net present value is a completely different concept and measure than net income or net loss. 2 reminders from the seminars on Thursday and Friday. The first, when you're doing your qualitative analysis, please remember each of your points for pro or con should have a case fact and an explanation why it's positive for pros and why it's negative for cons. So I've just pulled one of the sample pros out of the sample solution. It's available in Top Hat. The top part of that point is the case fact. You're told in the case that esports fans are in a younger demographic segment. Why that is a positive for the esports introduction. It might actually attract the younger audience that has not been coming to watch many movies. Second reminder around next steps, try to make them as actionable as possible. And it does appear that some people are struggling if you recommend not to proceed, and I understand that can be hard. So the easiest way to think of next steps, if you're recommending not to do something, is close the loops with the stakeholders. What that means is communicate with them. And so you'll see the sample next steps that we included in the sample solution. 2 of them are to close loops with stakeholders. So call the marketing team who's done all this work. Let them know you're not going to proceed. Call the technology vendor and let them know that you're not going to proceed. And it's not because you don't like their technology, it's not a good business opportunity. The final one is to schedule a meeting to explore other opportunities. So if the cinema wants to grow, we have not yet found a good growth opportunity. So recognize the goal has not been achieved, the problem has not been fixed, and you need to do so. Just don't start making recommendations that have not been supported through analysis. That's your Module 11 feedback loop.